So, we had this similar slide or had the same slide up in Des Moines. Just change comes from listening, learning, caring, and conversation. Be brave enough to start conversations that matter. So, just quick introductions and then we'll get things rolling here. I'm Brad Jones, founder and CEO of Sage Partners. We are a talent acquisition firm that specializes in IT, engineering, transportation, logistics, skilled services, and professional services. So, we're creating a pretty solid name for ourselves throughout the transportation industry. Our clients are located mostly in the Midwest, but we do account for others on a national level. So
I think that brings me next. I'm Leah Shaver. Good afternoon, everybody. I am the president and CEO of the National Transportation Institute. We support companies of all sizes across the US and Canada to make sure that folks benchmark their compensation, their best practices, their programs for drivers and technicians. I also work for SiriusXM and interact with professional drivers across the country as a talk radio host on the Road Dog Trucking radio channel. And I serve on the board of directors of the Women in Trucking Association and the Next Generation in Trucking Association. Beth?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Beth Potras, and I'm the founder and CEO for Drive My Way. Drive My Way is a state-of-the-art sort of differentiated recruiting marketplace matching CDL truck drivers with jobs based on their professional qualifications and personal lifestyle preferences. So we're trying to make hiring personal again, and our patented technology mixed with our services helps personalize the experience for both the drivers as well as the recruiters. So we're helping match drivers with jobs that they'll love and allow them to live the lives that they want, and matching recruiters with talent that's going to be engaged and be able to be retained. Chad.
And I'm Chad Hendricks. I am the host of the podcast Recruit and Retain Trucking Edition. So I get to talk to a little over 100 carriers a year, interview them as well as other vendors to find out what we can do in the industry. And then also the president of Brand Outcomes. Brand Outcomes started off as an ad advertising agency. So we handle creative work, media placement, but then we also get involved in retention consulting, as well as we've now are getting into actually foreign driver recruitment. So glad to be here.
Chad runs a podcast, so he has cool headphones, all the professional equipment.
Very much.
Not to mention a great podcast.
True. Okay, next.
all right. State of the industry, recruiting and retention. State of talent in the industry, not just industry overall, not just drivers. We're here to talk about all aspects of recruiting and retention. Core values come to mind. What are your core values? Do you live and die by those core values on a daily basis? Extending the candidate experience throughout the employment life cycle, recruiting in a candidate-led market, and cultivating a hire to retain culture. From my perspective, again, to be a little bit redundant, but core values, we speak heavily to them here at not only Sage Partners, but also some consulting work that we do at other organizations, making sure that everyone understands what core values mean. One of the examples that I gave in Des Moines was, I've been to plenty of organizations that have core values posted on a wall and assume that that's good enough, but if your employees don't feel core values or can't reiterate your core values, do they really mean anything? And the answer is no. Culture, is it a scenario where, someone is making a difference? Are they coming to work feeling as if they're creating a positive, or there's a positive environment and they're creating a positive outcome? Creating careers, not jobs. That one's pretty powerful. It's something that we live and die by on a daily basis. I think that's a very important statement. And if you let it digest, it will make sense. A job is something that we all experienced under the age of 18, where we went to work and we're just in it for the paycheck. Career is something that you go home and be proud of, and have participated in an environment that makes sense. RPRS, right people, right seats. Have to have people that believe in your core values, culture, and they're in it for a career, not jobs. So making sure you have the right people on the right seat of the bus.
Couple of just foundational items for the discussion today. In terms of what's happening in this very unique environment is that we see that supply and demand, a lack of supply and overwhelming demand is driving compensation up across the country at the city level. Beth, you can go to the next slide.
Okay, sorry.
I don't think I can do that, so I'll have to just mention, sorry about that. So in terms of this unique environment, a couple things to touch on. These have all been a big part of the discussion throughout the last year and a half, but I think they're really going to become even more so. In fact, I was interviewed by a number of news agencies recently about the holidays. We're seeing a lot of interviews being televised on news stations across the country about concerns about the holidays. Get your holiday shopping done as quickly as possible, because not only do we have products sitting out on the ocean, but we just, even if all of that gets unloaded, there's more demand there than we have in terms of supply. Significantly, continues to be the issue of age of our workforce and that not getting any younger. And also the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. We're nearing 90,000 folks that are disqualified, but what is not taken into account in that number is the folks that are self-selecting out of the industry or out of the choice to join the industry because they either will not qualify or they know that if they don't qualify, they're sort of cemented in there. A big part of the discussion also right now is the new small fleets being launched daily. I don't remember if I have that chart in here, but essentially we capped out the number of new motor carriers that had started last year by May of this year. And that number has continued to rise. So owner operators working on their own, where are they getting their equipment is the number one question. But the bottom line is that we have new small businesses popping up every single day. There are a number of other constraints that will continue. If the infrastructure bill does go into fruition, it's going to pull folks into construction. And of course, the new driver training regulations, if they do go into effect, just kind of put some more delays into our pipeline. You can go to the next one. In terms of earnings and across the board, a couple of opportunities that exist. This is some highlighted here, but number one would be in the first year for a driver. Brad just said something that really speaks to me. You talk a lot about career path, and that's essentially what you see here is the career path for a professional driver mapped out. Starting in whether you call it starvation or slavery, and that's not true across the board, but it does exist. Just look online and read what folks are experiencing. But from a really difficult first year, I'll leave it at that, all the way through to maybe the Cadillac of jobs working in a private fleet. This is the career path for a professional truck driver, but we really kind of stick them into silos and they have jobs. And one of the things that I think would really stand out is if we create some career path for our professional drivers, not only in that first year, but throughout their career, so that they do want to stay, they have milestones to reach and continue to reach for them. You can go to the next one, Beth. It's fuzzy for me. In terms of the shortage, where we see the shortage being felt at its strongest is, of course, at the bottom of the lead funnel, the pipeline, whatever the term that you use at your org here. Applicants without experience outnumber folks 3 to 1. And in terms of experience level, there are companies that are looking to hire drivers at every level of this pipeline. And in times where we're short drivers, that number gets smaller. But there's some exceptions, and those are in smaller companies. Those are in companies where insurance is dictating the requirements, and they continue to really struggle in terms of the pipeline. But between that 2-year point and then the folks that require hazmat, tanker, team drivers, pre-match team drivers, these are the folks that are feeling the shortage at its worst, and really trying to put as much into the offerings as possible. But the bottom line is shortages are being felt everywhere, and it's not exclusive to our industry either. As you know, as you go to any Starbucks and have challenges with your order, or any retail or any kind of service organization, every single door has a now hiring sign on it. Beth, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So what I want to talk about a little bit is, when we talk about all of these issues, some of them are not new. It's been growing problems for many years. And, we kind of coined our panel discussion around, winning the war for talent in trucking. And, in some respects, I think we can almost say that the war for talent's over, and in a lot of ways, talent won. It's become a much more consumer-led marketplace. They're certainly the sought after group. And what it's going to take to get us to a point where we can fuel sustainable growth, in my opinion, is really looking at the total employment life cycle and being able to support it all the way through from both sides, both the drivers as well as the employers. So that's going to take, first and foremost, some major change and some courageous leadership to do things different than we've done them before, not just the same old solutions. It's going to take playing the long game. It's not something that's going to change overnight. We need to change the image in trucking. We need to make it sexy again. We need to show drivers they can live the life they want doing a job they love. And we need to be able to realize that people are looking for work-life balance. They're looking for lifestyle. They're looking for purpose in their job. So we have to be able to meet them where they're at and create those opportunities. So it's going to take collectivism, much more collaboration, and sort of, instead of the war of sort of each trying to win on our own, working together so that we all win and everybody ends up with what they need. And a consumer mindset, really getting ourselves put in the shoes of the candidate and what's most important to them. And I think allowing new processes and approaches so that recruiters can start recruiting the way you yourself would want to be recruited, and putting yourself in their shoes. And then finally, purpose-driven actions and transparency. Total transparency. We all spend a lot of time chasing candidates, drivers. Those folks have expressed interest not in our job, but in multiple different jobs. And we're all trying to make that connection. We're all trying to nurture the talent. Not every opportunity is a good fit for everyone. So it's about, making the best use of our time and really trying to be transparent about where things stand so that people know what their opportunities are. And we're not trying to plug something in that's really not a good fit from the beginning. And I think it's a real issue because everybody wants to feel good about what you're doing, feel valued. And I think not only are the drivers burnt out, but recruiters are as well. So we need to make it worthwhile for everybody. So that was kind of a couple of the things that we kind of set the stage with, and Chad's going to kind of close us up here in terms of the content side of things with his piece.
Yeah, and so really the question that I have for everyone here is, are you worthy of a case study? Because what I'm seeing in the conversation, especially in the last 2 months with carriers, is that everybody is trying to do the same thing but get different results. And so we're really good at managing our companies. We're really good at managing the media budgets that we're using for recruiting. We're really good managers, but what we're looking for now is for trucking companies to actually have leadership in the industry, right? The problem is the work managing stuff, it works. It works really well until the world changes and it doesn't. And that's what we're experiencing right now is the world has changed from a recruiting standpoint and from a retention standpoint. And so what we're looking for is for companies that need to be early adopters. They need to be innovating, doing something different. What typically is happening though, and this is from my discussions in the last couple of months with directors of recruiting, is that there is a fear-based culture in a lot of companies. There is no budget available for failure, which means there is no budget for trying anything new. And so what's happening is we're getting stifled in the entire industry by not being able to do something that is different because it could fail, because we can't see our cost per lead and our cost per hire go up without there being negative repercussions. And so we're in this cycle of doing the same thing where it happens every week. I'll get a call. Do you know of a job board that is working right now? And it's like everybody knows all the job boards, right? They're all somewhat working or they work for a time period and I got to move my budget. It is changing over and over again and you're always moving things around. The issue is that we're not innovating enough and we need to be worthy of case study. The one thing that should be the bright light for everyone, and in my position, because I talk to so many carriers, is it is possible. I know of carriers right now that they are record recruiting years for them. They are recruiting the most drivers that they've ever recruited in the history of their company. I know other carriers that have record low turnover. Now the problem is usually they're not matching up both of those. I have carriers that are record recruiting and they're netting, 6+ drivers a month and they're a 900 truck carrier. They're not matching up both sides of that. The reality is it's possible. It's possible to have a record recruiting year and it's possible to have super low turnover. But you have to be willing to put the time and investment in it. And that's what we're going to get into. And I'm going to be speaking in Missouri this week at their conference. I have a list of 11 different things. Here's the unique things that you could be doing. But guess what? You got to be willing to have the risk to say they may not work either. So what would be really great now is to actually go through what we would like to do with everybody that's on this call. We want to actually talk specifically about the challenge, the top challenge that you're having, and where is the information that we have that will match up to hopefully give you some possibilities or give some answers. So some of the discussion themes that came out of the conference was we talked about gamification, we talked about the industry image, what new approaches, aka what is innovative but that nobody's actually going to do because they don't have the budget for it. What about non-driver talent? How do we hire quality drivers? That's always coming up a lot. And then pay is a huge topic. Leah's got tons of information and even just how to differentiate yourself. And that's a wide open topic. How do I differentiate myself from a pay structure, from a retention structure, from my marketing, from my recruiting? So those were the discussion points that came up. But right now what I'd like to do is I'm actually going to call on people here because we have a small enough group. I want to hear what your challenges are, and then we're going to address those specific challenges. So I'm sorry if I call you out. I hope you're all prepared to get off of mute because I'm just going to go how you are listed on my screen, which means that it doesn't make any sense to you on which order I'm going to call you. So the first one on my screen is Heather Franklin. Heather, could you come off mute and talk to us about what you want to get out of this seminar and what type of specific challenge your company might be facing? Heather, you might be not there, or you might be trying to figure out where the mute button is, which if you move your mouse on the bottom left side of the screen, it'll be there. But in the meantime, Jeff Martin, you're on the docket right now for the next person in line.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Chad. I appreciate it. I think one of our biggest challenges, we're a fairly small fleet and we don't need 100 drivers, but we do need some. And I think our biggest challenge is getting enough qualified people to reach out to us with our advertising and things that we're doing. We get a few and most of them aren't qualified, but getting them to respond to what we're doing is our biggest challenge.
So if I'm going to paraphrase that, Jeff, just to make sure I'm on the right page, getting people to respond to your ads, having a higher response rate to what you are doing is something that you're finding as a challenge.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right, perfect.
It's a better way to say it.
No, that's great. I love being able to interpret things because usually there's like 10 challenges all in one challenge. So there's a number of things that we could talk about within that. Okay, thank you so much, Jeff, for doing that. Ryan, you're up next. I'd like to hear what your challenge is.
So I assume that there's more than just one Ryan in this room, but you are actually looking at me.
Yeah, totally looking at you.
So I think it's a qualification thing. I think what we're seeing, and the challenge for us is that initial screening. We're getting people looking at Ruan and our business and what we have out there. But they may not be fully qualified. We're working through that initial vetting process. And then we get to the point where they're no longer interested in us. And I know that there's, some efficiencies that we have to gain and be upfront and be quick. But I think the biggest challenge is just being able to highlight that top candidate first when we start to close in on, maybe our pool that we're truly interested in. Would be our current challenge and obstacle.
Got it. So I saw there's two things that I heard in there, which is at some point there's candidates that no longer become interested, and it may be because you're not able to know which candidates really are the top candidates, so you're wasting time going through some non-qualified, and then by the time you get to them, it's been a long time potentially. So how do you narrow that down to who's the best qualified right away?
Correct. Yep.
Got it. Okay, that's a perfect one. I like that. Michael Parr.
I guess our big challenge, and I'm with the same company Heather is getting people into the pipeline to start.
Got it. So is that a marketing challenge? Would you describe that as, or something else?
I think it's a marketing challenge. What we're finding is our one consistent source of leads is Facebook, and we really would prefer to diversify that. But nothing else seems to bring quantity of.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So you may be looking for other avenues, other options. There'd be other questions around referrals and everything else too. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. In the pipeline, getting that in there. Scott, I'm Scott. I'm not even going to try your last name just in case I'm going to butcher it.
Hi.
This is manic.
Then you're not deserving a response if you don't try and butcher
I was
it.
gonna say, this is manic.
Sysmanic.
Well, he butchered it, right, Brad?
He did.
Yeah, he did. Oh, wow.
In a good way.
Seismanic.
I've heard worse.
How far you're ahead, Chad.
I've heard worse.
It's one of the challenges. People saying my name.
Yes.
Right.
I concur with kind of a number of the other comments, but certainly, getting the phone to ring. We outsource all our marketing efforts. We take the call as they come in, and so we're still having that issue of trying to convert that conversation from what's your pay rate to what can you earn. And even though we try to get down that road, well, there's that lack of trust and belief that you're going to get X number of miles, and it's about pay rate at the end of the day. So it just that's still a problem. It's just trying to get people to listen to the full story, something more than just the cover of the book, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's great, Scott. I do see that a lot. Here's the 4 questions every driver asks, and then they get off the phone. So it's good. Katie.
Well, mine's probably a little bit of a different spot in the recruiting side of things, and it's more of the poaching, for lack of better words, of maybe a driver that's just recently switched from a company and their previous company is trying to lure them back. Just those calls that are happening in the evenings after hours, and you really just have no idea who's in the lurch, and I guess whatever gimmick they might have to get them back.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Katie. Lacey.
Hi. I would probably say We would like to see a higher level of applicants completing the full application. We do get a lot of partial applications where it's just like name, basic information, like off of a Facebook or something of that nature. So just converting those and getting the driver to really complete the full application so we can start processing them. That would be helpful. Also, I would like to see some more efficiencies in our hiring process, being able to do things a lot sooner rather than waiting for things to return back with a DQF file. Another thing that I've noticed lately is the VOEs are a lot harder to get back, the verifications of employment. Legally, they have 30 days to give those back to us, and these companies are holding on till the 30th day, to give us the verifications back, and then we end up losing the driver because the company doesn't want to provide that verification.
Got it. Thanks, Lacey.
Yeah.
Monica.
Oh, Monica's are closing on a driver. They get the interest.
Okay.
It's in the chat.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, when they finally get them committed to orientation, but when it comes time to check in for orientation at the terminal, they've ghosted us or it's a no-show. Also, driver referrals used to be so hot for us, and over the last couple of quarters, it's been very disappointing. We have a great referral program, but we'll be changing things up starting in 2022.
Got it. Thank you. Tiffany?
Tiffany,
All
if
right.
you click at the bottom of your screen, you can unmute yourself. I think I put you in with the ability to talk.
Otherwise, Shelly. Okay. We'll just say there's no questions right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these questions and then ask our panel to discuss what their thoughts are on that. One of them that I thought would be a good one to start with is getting them past the conversation for the pay rate. There's a proof, lack of trust. So getting to that point. So, Leah or Beth, maybe that's something that we can, when it comes down to the conversation around pay, when we're talking about, the difference between what a company will pay you or show you in the advertisement versus what they could totally earn with a company is a big question mark for a lot of companies on how to convey that to a truck driver.
Yeah.
Driver response on this varies too. Like drivers are figuring out that the higher the pay rate doesn't necessarily mean the higher the paycheck, right? If we have lower productivity, as a lot of companies are experiencing. In fact, most of the companies that we've studied recently have a higher cost per mile and a lower net revenue, and also lower revenue for drivers because of a lack of productivity. Some companies guess that is all on the driver. I'm not someone who feels that way. I think that there are folks that they can kind of get comfortable and adapt their paycheck to their lifestyle. So even as they earn more money, they can kind of balance a little bit more work and life, but not everyone is like that. A lot of times there's also a lack of communication in the operations, or some holes where we're really not sharing that things are drop and hook, or that we can get one more load done this week if we do A, B, and C. So some of that is a communication method, but in terms of your marketing, I think that there is a need to kind of match up with all audiences here and share the views of what you do and how you get there, not only in the rate per mile, not only in the weekly earnings, not only in the annual earnings, but yes, you do need all of those things. And then lastly, if incentive programs or activities are a big part of the compensation structure, or it's really complicated to explain in the recruiting pitch, folks will back away today because, one savvy move is certainly to simplify it as much as possible.
Yeah, I would say in the same, it's ultimately a trust issue. I mean, I think you even mentioned. So the one piece is when you're laying out your offerings, doing it in the format of total compensation, thinking in total, but boiling it down for people. So we like to say, tell people what they're eligible for, or what they can get when they become eligible for it, and what is it that they have to do to obtain it. So it's very clear. If you want to make, this is how the variables of how we pay out. And if in order to make X, here's when you'd become eligible, here's exactly what you need to do. And do the same with your benefits so that they can start to see how all of the pieces fit together in terms of total comp. And then at the end of the day, it's just that they can speak to and hear the testimonials from other drivers who are getting the miles, who are getting the paychecks, who can validate that, yes, you deliver on what you say you're going to do.
That's a really good point. Your very best marketing is your own people and your own success stories. And in terms of trust, a huge issue that we're experiencing right now is that companies are marketing in the 90th to 99th percentile, but what they really deliver to a first-year driver can oftentimes be in the 40th percentile. And so drivers have a good reason to not trust what they're seeing in an ad and to try to understand. And so our recruiting staff, which are our frontline salespeople, and they are truly a full-time sales and marketing department, not only a recruiter, an offshoot of our human resources department as classically has been. They really need to be educated in all of the different areas of our operation, of what comes next for a driver, of what the potential and the possibility is, but also what really lands in the paycheck.
Yeah.
Similar, the only add to that, similar, and it's on both sides of the fence, and something, whether it's recruiting for drivers, whether it's recruiting for internal talent, I think we've gotten used to somewhat old school strategy in some cases, which is, okay, I've hired a recruiter. Here's what we offer. What I need you to do is start at A and finish at C, D, or E, or F, whatever that letter is, and rather than tailor that conversation to the individual on the phone, back to the sales side of it, we don't handle driver recruiting. We do everything in transportation and logistics with the exception of drivers. But I can honestly tell you, it's very, very similar to our situation with other positions as well. And everything has to be handled the same. Tailor the conversation to that person's experience. Start a third of the way down the page and say, hey, how was your experience at so-and-so? I heard they were okay. Was your experience positive or negative? And, begin the dialogue, versus just feel like all I'm trying to do in 30 seconds is set the hook as fast as possible, and while I realize speed is of the essence, so is trust. I think trust sometimes gets trumped. I think speed sometimes trumps trust. And I think you have to be careful with that.
I just want to chime in on one thing. The one piece is feedback is a gift. Drivers are not shy about having an opinion on things. And I find that a lot of companies, that a lot of recruiters aren't even aware of what drivers are out there saying about their organization on social media. So, getting out there, getting tuned in and connected with some of those groups and hearing what people say, because that's when they're actually out there saying, hey, I'm a first-year driver. I joined after 5 years. Yes, that's true. I'm getting X miles. The paychecks are real. Or they're out there saying, oh, that's not it. They don't do it. Everyone knows you're never going to get those miles. And so they're telling others. Now, granted, not all those comments are factual always, but you need to understand what tapes are being played, if you will, out there in the market.
For me, the biggest thing is getting so Scott, you mentioned the conversation. How do we get the conversation from pay rate to total compensation? What I have found is that recruiters are usually their biggest enemies. And it's a lot of times because of the type of person we hire in recruiting. The type of person we hire in recruiting is someone who is friendly, who wants to talk to people, and they want to provide answers. And so what typically happens with a lot of calls is one of the first questions, if not the first question from a driver, is, what is your pay? And the normal response from a recruiter is, oh, well, our pay is, 55 cents a mile and da 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 da. what's the problem with that is we need to be in control of the conversation. So what we've been training recruiters on doing now is, hey, I want to make sure that we're talking apples to apples on your pay, because if you're a lot like me, you want to make the most amount of money. So, and I just want to make sure that's the case. So tell me what's been your experience with pay right now? And then they'll start telling you some things like cents per mile. Oh, well, how many miles are you getting? Okay, then they tell you that. And well, are you getting per diem? Okay, what's your health benefits? Like, how much does that cost, and what are the benefits for that? Like, is there a retirement plan? We keep asking them questions to lay out all the information we need on pay, and then once I have all that information, then the recruiter can say, would it be helpful if I explained you how our pay program works so that you would know whether or not you had the best compensation? That controls the conversation versus the normal right now is just telling them what the cents per mile is. So that is one of the biggest things we do in our recruiter sales training, is getting that conversation flipped, because whoever's asking the questions controls the conversation. So that was a good one. Scott, I hope that helps there. I know there's a couple other things in there. Another question that I want to make sure we get to based on time is the qualification question, right? Getting leads that are not qualified or needing better qualified leads. And that was a question that came from Jeff, from Ryan. Let's see who else. There were a couple other people that said that. So Leah, Beth, maybe probably start out with you. Talk about what you're seeing from leads and their qualifications and how many fry cooks we're getting to apply for CDL jobs.
Yeah, actually, there's quite a bit going on out there, especially now that unemployment opened, kind of back up a bit. We see that, and somebody asked, I think it was Lacey, talked about the high level of applicants not completing the full app. Well, the bottom line is it's all about making that connection and trying to get curated connections for yourself, because you're already busy enough. You want to make sure that the people that are coming your way already meet the minimum qualifications for your job. They live within your hiring area. They're worth your time. They're already inclined to want your type of work because you already know it's a preference of theirs, versus somebody coming in blind where you really don't know much about them. And now you're kind of chasing them to figure out what they're looking for. Drivers want to make that personal connection right up front. They want to speak to somebody, to have the conversation that Chad just basically relayed for us with that recruiter before they take the time to finish that application for you. And I know you need some information to be able to process and screen them up front, but they're asked to fill out applications everywhere they go. So they first want to make sure from their perspective, they're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. So you have to get that first and foremost. And I think that it's difficult because you're up against the fact that they're just burnt out on having to provide all their information on their application, and they're not wanting to give everything. So I would zero in on the things that are absolute your knockouts, most important, so that you can determine what makes at least a worthwhile conversation to have, and focus on the people who meet that threshold and then move forward. Because otherwise, as somebody mentioned, you're going to be calling all the way through and you're finally getting to the one who's perhaps the most qualified, but it's been so long that now they're gone.
And to that, Ryan and Lacey's questions kind of overlap a little bit. And I just want to bring up something that Chad said when he was talking about, being worthy. He said of a case study. In this case, it's of an applicant, right?
Yes.
This is an area where you might have to look at your process and say, are we being innovative in this environment? Are we adapting to what's really happening? And the bottom line is, as Beth said, a driver fills out an application today when they are already set on you. They've made the decision. And so, there's technology we can look at. There's different processes that we can look at and eliminate and clean up a little bit. But what I hear is that there's too many steps and qualifiers, right? That are delaying the process. The winners today, and I guess I feel this way every day. I don't know if Chad and Beth and Brad would agree with me, but I think that recruiting has always been this this war of speed to lead, and I'm not trying to take the human being out of it, but the bottom line is, if you want to win a race right now, you need to be a lot faster than you are in the way that you're conveying the story. But so that says we need to be innovative. We need to really look at that process and say, what are we doing here that we can clean up? What's actually necessary? And then in terms of the recruiting, the active recruiting, and Chad and Beth, I would defer. I mean, in this case, because I haven't done this for a while, but you know, there are pieces where you can verbally get the information and enter it for your candidate as they're talking through, and you have them on the line, and then just send them the signature part so that they're signing off on it, and you can do the rest of your job. But since I just said on the line, there does come a time where we want to have every candidate on the phone. But if you're sitting and waiting for the phone to ring and for folks to chase after you, I think that that's a huge red flag right now in terms of your process being outdated. And I'm not necessarily talking, by the way, to the folks that asked the question about the qualifications, but I don't want to let that go. This is an area that, you know, in fact, I heard my husband talking to a private fleet the other day saying something about the phone ringing. And I was like, the phone doesn't ring anymore, dude. It does not ring. You know, it's not going to be like it was when we were in the office and they were calling nonstop. So, you know, we do need to break down those trust barriers and get relationships going and nurture candidates and do a whole lot of things with both passive and active recruiting. But you know, they're not going to fill out an application until they're already set on you.
And they're only going to talk to you using at a time that's convenient for them, using a channel that they prefer. So you really have to get out of the box. You know, I had a recruiter the other day saying, well, of course you were able to reach them. You called them after hours. You know, our matchmaker team was able to reach a driver that she wasn't. Well, yeah, you have to call them after hours because it's a local driver and they're doing a route during the day. They're home, you know, they're available to speak in the evening. So if they want chat, if they want to do a live chat, if they want to text, if they want to talk to you live, you know, however it is that they're communicating, you need to meet them there.
Who here on the panel still sees our customers responding to Facebook comments and messages? You know, a huge recruiting tool today is Facebook, right? We know that, but they're still responding saying, sure, call us during business hours with this number. Exactly. They're on the phone already. Your social media engagement is their phone call. You have to have people and tools available to engage with them. That's my unsolicited opinion with regard to that. But I'm curious, Chad, what you think about that.
Well, before I go, Brad, anything on the qualified prospects side of things that you would say?
You know, no, you know, I mean, again, from our perspective, you know, one thing that is very interesting, utilizing my experience based on from the driver recruiting aspect, when I was a huge part of that in the previous organization, to rolling it up into what it is that we do today. You know, I think, you know, this is really doesn't answer that question specific, but I think we're in an environment, and even specifically transportation, as I work in other industries as well, you know, it's still, I guess, I wouldn't, old school is probably the best term. You know, I mean, we're waiting for the worm to turn. You know, it's been a cyclical industry forever, and it's not coming back, you know. So I mean, those that are sitting here holding on to the ski rope hoping that it's going to pull them up are going to wait too long, because it's not going to change, you know. I mean, that ship has sailed. So, you know, we're so used to going, well, gosh dang it, how many applicants are in the queue, and it was a percentage game. Well, it still is the same percentage game, it's just on far less volume, you know. I mean, what can you do to capitalize on less, which honestly, there's a greater return on that investment if you become good at it.
For me, when we talk about the qualifications of the prospects, first thing that I would always go to is, if you're getting a lot of not qualified, what you're advertising, what it says on your ad has to be looked at, as well as how are they targeting. Those are the basic things to look at. They may be completely correct. That does not mean you won't get fry cooks applying for CDL positions still, but you need to double check that. The other thing, so one thing that we're doing that's very unique, in fact, I'll tell you, there's only one carrier in the entire country doing it, is we are utilizing an assessment tool for drivers to know whether or not they're going to be a high quality driver. Most people have said this at some point or another. I want our recruiters to hire quality and hire for retention, but nobody's ever given anybody the answer of what that means. Like, how do I do that as a recruiter? So we've taken an assessment, and what we're doing right now is we're just marketing the assessment to the entire driver population. We're not saying it's for hiring, it's not for employment, we're just marketing the assessment. When drivers take that assessment, they get scored based on top drivers, that based on your top drivers or based on industry studies that have been done. And then what we do is we take their information and now we market to them. We only market to the ones that have scored higher on that assessment. The idea is I know they're a truck driver, and two, I know that they're a high quality truck driver compared to on their assessment. So now I'm spending dollars just on the higher quality candidate. That is something that has been fascinating to look at over the last 8 months. The other piece of it, which don't forget, is you've marketed to a lot of people, and probably about a third of them are no responses, and another third of them are probably not interested, and then the rest of them are various other things. If you're changing things, if you're doing things, if you're making advertising creative, you can remarket to those people. And I see probably about 80%, 85% of the carriers I've talked to that are not reusing leads that they've had in the past in smart ways. So you've spent money on leads in the past that are now just in the trash, but those are like gold. It is like, if you think about it, job boards and everybody else, they have this huge database of drivers. That is their value. You have a huge database of drivers. You could have that value. At some point, I do believe that companies should have a large enough database, if they're doing the right enough things to build their database, that their dependency on other people's databases that they're renting would go down, and you can own that database more. And there's a number of unique ways to do that. I don't have enough time to talk about those in 9 minutes, but I would love to talk to anybody afterwards. Another thing that's come up is referrals. Referrals was another thing that came up in here. Are you seeing anything, Leah, from a referral standpoint, or tracking like referral bonuses, and are things actually having an effect? What do you see?
So the biggest issue here is that folks are increasing what they're willing to pay in a referral, and they think that alone generates activity and interest in the referral program. It's kind of like your pay package, right? Increasing pay alone does not generate new driver supply that's suddenly interested in your company. It's one component, and it makes you more marketable, and it gives your recruiters something new and exciting to talk about, but it doesn't necessarily grow this whole new population of drivers. So, look, if you are in an environment, and I see the note here about referrals, that we have a great referral program. It used to be so hot for us. Recently, it's not. Frankly, there's a lot of folks out in the market, and you have to train your people. Chad, I'm volleying to you here, but you have to train your people on how to get referrals or give referrals, frankly. But also, putting a sign on the back of your trailer that's microscopic and a driver has to like tailgate in order to see, they're not going to see it. Just like, your people alone knowing that you have a referral bonus isn't enough. You have to coach them, lead them, inspire them, really take care of them first. That will motivate them to take care of you. Communicate your openings where you have needs. Really market internally to your people, and they will then do the work for you. That's where we see success in referral programs. Otherwise, folks kind of give the same feedback. We've put more money into our referral program, and it isn't doing anything for us.
Well, Leah, since you volleyed over to me, I'll go next quick. So the referral program I love. I just like giggle about it because it's so fantastic. Here's what we've been doing is when Leah talks about training your internal people, it's not just your recruiters, it's also your operations staff of when to ask for referrals. And there's a specific time to ask for that. And there's a way to ask for that. And then the other one that people really don't think about is, how do I get a higher percentage of my drivers to give referrals? Because there's a percentage of them that are extroverted enough that they will talk to people and give referrals, right? Those are the people you're probably getting. Then there's a pretty large population of introverted drivers who love the windshield, who are not going to talk to people. And so like one of the examples we gave at the conference was how to get referrals when you hate people. That's one of our training videos that we give drivers. And it's essentially a guy that he had the most referrals in the company. He'd go up to people, he'd hear them complaining, he'd flick a business card in their face, and he'd say, hey, if you're sick of bitching, call this person. And then he'd walk away. That was his referral program. and he had the most referrals in the whole company. There are ways to get your drivers to do more, and it's through some training, as well as there's marketing techniques that we could use to make sure it's on top of mind. And so I love that program. So if anybody's really interested in like a referral, like unique way to look at it and how to promote it, I would love to talk to them on that.
And not just drivers, by the way.
Yeah, not just
Yeah.
drivers.
Yeah,
Yeah, other employees.
Agree. Well, and again, just to highlight that, I think, something that I utilize to pare that down is you don't, if you're a 100 truck fleet, you don't need you're to assume that you can put something in the handbook or post something out there that you're going to get 100 drivers to go out and do your referral program because it has a dollar value attached to it. So wrong. You're better off to take 10 of those 100 and call them individually, walk them through your program, check in with them every 3 to 5 days, and make sure that that program is successful. And if it's not working, why?
I'd love to just add one last thing on this, and I'm sorry about that. But the other thing is training your recruiters to train their drivers that are happy and give them good feedback to pounce on that opportunity and say, I really need to meet my quotas this month. So if you know anybody that potentially would be interested in the same success that you've had with us, I would love to talk to them. I'd be happy to call them. You can call them. You can give me their number. I can text them, like whatever you think is the approach. I would love these referrals from you. It doesn't just, start and end with, hey, we have this bonus, go do our work for us.
Yep.
Beth, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm good. I mean, you guys said all the other things. I just think there's another untapped group too, not just referrals, but going back to the folks that no longer work for you because they left for greener grass and maybe discovered it wasn't so green. And, if they're eligible for rehire, reconnecting with them and re-nurturing them back in.
Yeah. All right. Another topic that got brought up was ghosting. And getting drivers to actually show up. There are some companies that are really fantastic at this and some companies that really struggle with it. So, Beth, you got any advice on the ghosting side of it? I know you're in the recruiting side, not necessarily to show up to orientation, but.
No, yeah, and I can't, well, I know you have people calling them while they're in your orientation to leave and come to theirs. But in terms of ghosting, I'm hearing it a lot from recruiters. It's nothing new. But I have to think where one of the places aside from, reducing the amount of effort on the driver in terms of the application process required, we've got to improve the connection between the driver's first interests and you connecting with them. We have to knock down all the barriers. So, I'm hearing a lot from folks, so I can't connect. Well, trying to get at it. Well, how are you connecting? Well, I've sent them 3 emails. Well, don't send them an email because no driver is going to answer your email. Maybe 1% of the drivers will respond to an email. You have to leave a voice message. You have to be just like you do on any other business call. I'm calling you because you've expressed interest in my job and I need an answer from you on what's the best time to reach you. Or here's alternatively 3 times that are great times for you to reach me. Here's my number. Here's a text follow-up. I just left you a voicemail. Call me here. So that you give them all the opportunities to make that connection and make it easy. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about is, click to connect. Like Leah said, you're on social media. I'm available now. Don't tell me to call your recruiter in the middle of a workday. I want to talk to somebody now. So give them all those options and don't miss that opportunity, because if you miss the opportunity and do all the back and forth phone tag, voicemail tag, somebody else is going to connect with them and they're gone.
Brad, you have anything with the candidates showing up since you place candidates?
We do. It's become more common. I mean, our situation has certainly become more common on the other side of it as well, with respect to ghosting and the no-shows, or committing and then the Friday before the Monday they're supposed to start, but some of that does have a little to do with, counter offers similar to drivers and so on and so forth. But all I can tell you is if the candidate, driver, non-driver, the greatest amount of success that any one person can have from the recruiting standpoint is to ensure that process is, the hand is held all the way to orientation, or the process is held all the way to when the first day of employment starts. I mean, whether that's for someone to sit behind the desk or someone to sit behind the wheel. And I don't know. I can't stress that enough, because I can promise you we're used to getting signed offers and go, good, they're going to start on the 14th. We don't have much to worry about. And ultimately you do, I mean, it's competitive on both sides. So
Can I just ask the group? I mean, do you guys feel like there's a heavy correlation between the overall either abandonment rate at the end at orientation or beyond, because of how we've lengthened the recruiting process in total due to the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse and, the backlog with employment verifications, et cetera? Because they're continuing to be recruited, right? Like, so I know one of the things we tell people is, if you've got an offer extended and it's contingent, or, you're in the back end process, let us know, because we'd like to try to get the person turned off, if you will, because while you're running all that stuff and you think you've got them, there's 50 other people running their stuff and trying to figure out what they can offer that you're not. So anybody have any, like, what have you experienced in terms of your years of experience and any cyclical results in this category? Anybody have any?
I'm just waiting. No? Okay. I thought Chad was gonna say, so I wasn't sure. I mean, he's actively in that area. I think this is kind of a combination of issues right now, but there was also the question about poaching and the fact, and it goes also to our conversation about that speed to lead component. And I'm not saying qualify everyone and then clean them up after, because we don't want to be known as those folks that are doing that. And I don't want to see people being treated as disposable either. I mean, you don't want that reputation. However, we're in a very competitive environment. And so there's the component of engagement, right? When's the last time you accepted an unknown caller? By the way, I got like 14 potential spam calls today, both on my cell phone and on my office line. But there's what technology are we using to enable our processes better? What connections are our people making, and are we asking the questions about connections that our people are making with the candidate? How are we continuing to keep them engaged and court them through the process? My relationship between recruiting and dating is one of the more popular components that I talk about on speaking engagements and podcasts. But the bottom line is you're in a courtship now, and it's never been truer than today. And so, you want what you say to your own people to be the loudest and proudest and above the noise of all the folks that are around them. And then certainly as it pertains to your candidates, you want the same thing. I could probably keep going here, but I just think it's a number of different issues, creating this perfect storm. And then lastly, someone mentioned, getting verifications and fleets waiting until the 30th day. Keep a list of those companies and have a very direct conversation about who's really hindering your process, but also be very realistic about the fact that they're in the same boat that you are, and they're very much looking to recruit their rehire back into their mix, and that's why they're doing that. So I think I've said enough as usual.
Yeah. So I'll make a comment, but I just want to say it is 2:00. Well, 2 Central. Sorry for anybody that's in a different zone. So if you do need to jump off, don't worry, we won't take offense to it. But we'll continue the conversation. So if anyone stay on, the things that we're looking at going to address is I'll address the ghosting and kind of poaching thing, Katie and Monica, that you specifically talked about. But then we will still address the attention getting of marketing and getting that phone to ring as another topic. And then I'll look for another one if there's anything additional. So feel free to stay on with us, but feel free if you need to jump off. So Katie, you mentioned poaching, and Monica, you mentioned ghosting, and I kind of put them in a little bit of the same arena. What we have been finding is, if you know that you already have a good follow-up process from hire to orientation, that's already in place, it's already there, there's a communication plan for that, great, you're there. Why are people still leaving potentially? And one of the things that's an area to address is, in the recruiting process, did we actually address all the potential issues that there could be? And so one of the ways that a recruiter can close a conversation with a driver is called a summary close. And what they're doing is they're essentially going through the checklist. Okay, if this happens, you're good. You're coming on. Okay, if this happens, you're good. Now there's some things in there that aren't employment related to, hey, because if we get you this many miles, that's good. Your pay is good. The equipment's good, right? We're going through that checklist. But there's an additional checklist that we can go through. So if your current employer comes back and offers you another 5 cents a mile, is that something that you're going to consider, or is that something you're going to still stay on for? That's a perfectly legitimate question to ask a potential candidate. And if they say, oh, geez, well, if they were going to offer another 5 cents a mile, I guess I'd have to think about that. Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about that. Now I'm going to bring back all the complaints they had. You talked about not getting enough miles, and talked about this and how you were treated, because I went through all those conversations really well. I'm going to bring that all back up. And then I'm going to say at the end, if they do end up offering you that morning, let's say they do something to try to lure you back, and that happens, just come back to me and talk to me and tell me that happened, right? Because I don't want to get to the point where I'm expecting to come and you don't have to feel awkward about it. Let's just have a conversation. It's really good. There's also the whole conversation of which is like a revolved around buyer's remorse and that piece of it. And how is their spouse going to react? Hey, if your spouse brings up an issue, like, what are you going to do with that? Do you want to come back to me and have me talk to your spouse? There are things that we can ask in the recruiting conversation that would both help with the ghosting and that poaching that you talked about, Katie, because I want to make sure that I'm addressing every possible issue that could come up. I'm predicting that the driver afterwards is going to have some buyer's remorse. I'm predicting that they're going to have some uncertainty around coming to a new company. I'm going to predict that they're going to be getting orientation calls from other people or trying to poach from their past employer. I'm predicting those ahead of time and making sure that my recruiters are addressing them. So those are the areas I'd check the communication plan between hire and orientation, make sure that that's all lined up and doing really well. And maybe there's some tweaks to that need to happen that are unique. And then I would be thinking about my recruiters and how are they closing the conversations with drivers? Because usually what will happen if a driver agrees to get an application, the recruiters just want to get off the phone and celebrate. They're like, oh, good, I got him. Click, it's done. And there is a lot of follow-up questions that actually can happen after that would make a lot of sense. So I like those. Another piece that got brought up then is the attention gathering from marketing. Getting a higher response rate from the marketing side of things. Beth, I'm curious, you have your platform, obviously, that carriers are using, but you yourself are also marketing to drivers to get them on the platform. Are there things that you're seeing being used or that you're using that are having a higher response rate?
Yeah, I would say that, I call especially 2020 and 2021 the year of storytelling. I think, part of our responsibility in improving the image in trucking and really get out to people how it's changed, that, folks have, dealt with the pandemic. We are seeing a decrease in the true over the road jobs. People are trying to put together lanes so that folks can be home more often. People are trying to accommodate people with, necessary needs they have in terms of their schedule and their life. And we're trying to put those things out there. So again, people understand what they can expect, but we're trying to incorporate the storytelling in terms of the offering and the employment experience, not only teasing out the aspects of the employment value proposition of why should a driver want to come and work for you, but also why do drivers stay working for you, and telling a bit of the story of the folks who are there, because they're your ultimate testament to what it's truly like to work there. And then, trying to cut to the chase to your point early on what the expectations are, kind of the minimum qualifications, because people have certain things in their life that are just, showstoppers. So we might as well cut to the chase on those right up front. And then, we'll circle back someday if anything changes, but right now it's not a fit, whether it's from your perspective or theirs. They don't want to waste their time either. So we like to hit them with those things up front. We have people that call us and say, hey, I want to travel with my 60-pound Rottweiler, and I only want to talk to carriers who will let me do that. Okay, that's important to you. We've got you covered.
Brad, anything on the marketing side that you guys are using from a candidate attraction?
No, I mean, not really from an attraction standpoint. I mean, because quite frankly, I mean, in our world as well as, anybody else's, whether you back to the sales side of it, whether you're trying to introduce a candidate to an internal position that we might have to someone that we're doing business for, each conversation is different, and so we use advertising lightly from our perspective, mainly to get introduced, to make the phone ring and to get introduction, because the one thing that we don't want to do is it's like a text, I mean, anybody that receives a text, and if you just throw a bunch of information on a text, 10 people are going to read that 10 different ways. When you go to advertise and you put an advertisement out there, 10 people read that advertisement for your position, it's going to get read 10 different ways, and oh, they're just trying to set the hook, or oh, that's not true, or whatever the case may be. So, detail is awesome, but little is good, is kind of our methodology, mainly because we want to have the opportunity to get them on the phone and start with the dialogue versus just a sales approach. So.
Yeah, Leah, anything to respond on the detail is maybe not necessary on an ad, or maybe you do need to have the pay details?
One of the worst is when you try to tell your entire story in text on an ad. You have limited space. This is where a testimonial comes in really handy. Beth was talking about telling your story, and I said earlier, that you want the noise to your own people to be the loudest and drown out everything else around them. That's, that to me is the most victorious type of marketing, when you are applauding and celebrating and recognizing your own people, how you put it in the paycheck, their productivity. Chad, one of your clients comes to mind. They often market their more productive drivers on a weekly basis. I love that marketing tool, especially in an environment where, as I mentioned before, productivity has been impacted at a lot of fleets. Sharing the story of what folks, can expect. In this case, they're talking about the top 5. I like to see the middle ground, because that really tells you, where folks are going to land. But the bottom line is they're sharing their story, to what Beth said.
Well, I just want to jump in really quick too. So I come from a consumer products background also. So every single ad that we all see every single day, all brands are trying to pitch us a number of different ways. But every brand has a brand key and a target persona of who they're going after. So you talked earlier, Chad, about the importance of being targeted. You really have to look at your organization, who you are, what you're all about, and truly be able to define your brand and kind of what type of person really does make a good fit. And that's how you should be structuring your advertising to reach those people, so that when the ad goes out, you're trying to talk to those people. I mean, every brand does it. Certain brands are targeted for, I don't know, males between 22 and 50 or 45 years old, the Axe brand or something, for Unilever, for example. Whatever the brand is, everybody has a target. Know what you're targeting and incorporate that in the messaging and tailor your brand to that audience. And that's who you're going to speak to.
This is a question for the panel, but it's mainly because it's just top of mind. But I don't know, maybe it's unique, maybe it's not. But something with respect to branding that comes to my mind with respect to the referral program through the driver aspect of it, for example. But has anybody ever seen marketing where call recruiting at this number or call a driver direct at this number? I mean, if you had someone in your referral program that would be willing to accept that call, I mean, is that something? I mean, like I said, I've not seen it, and that's just something that hit me as we're having this discussion that might be kind of cool. So
there are companies that are marketing actively, and their drivers will pipe in and say, if you'd like to ask questions about my experience, please message me. Those are active super referrers that the company is not only coveting and supporting the experience that they're really looking for, but to Chad's point, they're training them on how best to do that, whether it's putting their own content on YouTube, whether it's engaging on ads that they see, et cetera. That's an ambitious individual that's looking to augment their career, right? Not just their job by adding, the role of super referrer.
Yeah.
I think that idea, Brad, I love new ideas. It made me just think of a new idea. So
Innovation.
Innovation. I love innovation. So I think that,
Live.
so one thing that I'm going to point out from a marketing standpoint, if you want a higher conversion of that, typically what you're going to see on a lot of ads is you're going to see the truck driver with his arm folded, standing by a truck. And you can see people's ads. I don't know if people know this, but there is a part of Facebook that's page transparency. You can go to any company's Facebook page and you can see the exact ads that they are running currently, just by putting in their name. So if that's of any interest, just Google Facebook page transparency. It'll show you the instructions of how to get there. It's not difficult. You're essentially going to their page, scrolling down on the left side, you're going to see page transparency. You say, click all, I want to see all. And then you can scroll down to the bottom and there's a button on the bottom to click and it brings you to the page that shows it all. But when you look there, you should be disappointed because there's hardly any ads.
The same pictures.
So what the problem with the industry right now from a marketing standpoint is the creative. Right now, companies are trying to promote and market that they're better. And that's typically around pay, which is a cost. What we need to change is we need to market unique and different. It has to be something that stands out, because what happens, and so let's see, Michael was saying that you were using Facebook really a lot, and that's probably one of the main things that's been consistent. What you need to avoid is the scroll buys. And what's going to happen with those ads is you're going to get a lot more scroll buys. So if we want a higher conversion rate out of that, we need something that's going to stop them. I'll put you under a non-binding NDA for this meeting, so you can take the idea. Like one thing I'm pitching this week, actually presenting, is creating essentially a fake news story about the company that is hiring horse drivers and jockeys because they don't have any drivers. They're going to start pulling their trailers with horses. Now, I know that's not realistic, but it will sure stand out in an ad campaign, and it'll stop people from scrolling. Like when you see a picture of horses, a team of horses hooked up to a trailer. That's the type of stuff that needs to happen. Now, when people bring up the branding and what that looks like, even though I gave you an idea that I'm going to present to another company, it still should look different. Like, yes, it could be horses hooked up to the trailer, but there's actually a way between your branding and your values, when you combine those two, that you can create a unique look. A lot of people are saying, how do I differentiate my company? Well, that is one way. There's a whole process to go through, and most companies have not really thought about branding from a trucking standpoint. A lot of the conversation is, well, we're family orientated. You and everybody else is family orientated. And it's just not a differentiator. I look at it.
Say it.
What am I?
We treat you like family, and we call you by your name.
Yeah. Well, and my response to that is always, well, did you go to their wedding? Have you been over to their house for dinner? Have you been at their funerals lately? Because do you say to your drivers, I love you? Because that's what families do. Now, you could be like, American Family, like a good neighbor, right? That could be a whole brand, around it, but you're really not probably family. So there is unique things that can happen in the marketing world from a creative standpoint that would stand out. That will get you a higher conversion on the ads, because right now all the ads look the same. And they're competing typically on, we're better because we pay different. And that's not where you want to compete anyway. Even if you are paying better, you want to get their attention first. The other thing that I wrote down here is when you're using things that, like certain job boards where you can't really put videos, they don't want you to go off their website. You can look at the job descriptions. There's ways to, when you look at the values of a person that you want to hire, there's ways to word those job descriptions so that when the type of person you want to hire, when they read certain words, they go, oh, that's me. You can change your job descriptions, and usually you'll need some type of HR help in that area. But there's ways to change those job descriptions to stand out, because a lot of people have a hard time standing out in the job board arena because there's just not a good way to do it.
Awesome.
I'm looking.
That was awesome.
So from the people that are here still, Heather, Jeff, Michael, Katie, Monica, are there any things that came up, or any other challenges that came up because of what we said that you're thinking, oh, that's a good idea, or I'm confused by that, or I want some more detail on that? If you would just unmute yourself, chime in, and if there's nothing else, then
Or
say
an
good-
innovation.
say
We
goodbye.
just talked about the importance of
Yeah.
starting to be more innovative. If there's something that you've done or you'd like to share, you've seen done that you think other people would benefit from, that'd be great sharing point.
And we'll wait 7 seconds in silence. Otherwise, then I'll just call on
That'd
you.
be hard,
It'll be hard for Beth.
indeed.
I'd
All right.
say, I think it's a good reminder to take a look at your current processes regarding follow-up. Once a driver's here, making sure that you continue to stay connected until, throughout, when they're making connection and relationship with dispatch and things like that. Because you're their person, really.
Yeah. Katie, does your company have like a feedback system at all for drivers ongoing?
We are the system.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, looking at your process, one thing that I've been talking to carriers about, and I've been calling it the driver activation model because everybody wants some more damn drivers. When you do feedback, if you do have a process for that, the biggest, I think, like treasure that is sitting still buried with that is once you have feedback from a driver and there's a positive response, getting a testimonial. If there's a negative response, fixing it, and then getting a testimonial. Taking those testimonials have been really powerful from a conversion side. So they haven't been as powerful, I've found, on the putting it out as an advertisement and doing some paid ads for them. But if you're driving drivers to a page where there's many video testimonials, it becomes that trust aspect and a proof of concept or proof that we're telling you the truth. Then the other piece of that, and there's actually a really easy way to get video testimonials. We're using a system called Trade Response. So if there's any need for video testimonials, there's a good system out there of how to get it remotely from drivers. But then on top of that is then as soon as that happens, when there's a good experience, it's also the flag in the air for the recruiting team or the operations team to go for a referral. So then there's a whole referral process. So what I'm saying here is your feedback system should feed into other systems that create kind of a whole atmosphere and environment of improving the whole thing. So video testimonials, referrals, and there's one other thing that I was thinking about that now I'm blanking on. But there's a system that you can put in there that would really help.
Well, and if conversations with, your driver manager or driver ambassador, people having issues because drivers tend to just up and quit. And they just leave, but they never have a conversation saying, hey, something's changed, or I have a new need, or I have an issue. They don't even bring it up to you. So whatever nuggets you can get from all your other touch points, even if it's just a conversation with the dispatcher or someone, to create an encouraging environment for people to be open about what they're struggling with, to at least give your company an opportunity to address it before they just up and leave.
Yeah. Monica, you brought up ghosting. Any thoughts on some of the things that we talked about with ghosting? Anything that actually helped, or still need some clarification in that area, or other thoughts?
I just want to, if anybody has, so Heather wrote to us on our chat that she just started with her company as a recruiter and she doesn't have much experience with this. That's why she's here today listening. If anybody has any advice for Heather, it would be one little nugget she could take away for having this hour and a half be worth her while.
Heather, one thing I would really make sure, if the company does not have a formal training process for recruiters, that is a huge gap, something that you should be asking for. There's a number of things that can really speed up that process for you coming into a new company, even if you're an experienced recruiter. There's a lot of things that should be happening there. So if there isn't something in place, I would try to push on that for the whole team, because I have found the entire team of recruiters, depending on how many are there, all get better when training gets put in place, when it's formalized. So I'll send you something, Heather, afterwards that would be helpful as well, actually. Let's
Thanks
see.
for hanging with us, guys. I know we stayed
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anything else, Michael, Jeff? Anything from either of you?
Somebody just asked me if this is recorded, and I believe it is.
It is. Yep. It warned me at the beginning that this is recorded.
I appreciate your time today, and it's been very informative. Really has.
Great.
Anything, Jeff, that stands out to you that you're like, oh, that's one thing I'm going to do?
Well, several things. There's some training opportunities I think that we can take that will help us out a lot. We do have an issue with the ghosting, that was great hearing, talking about that, where we've hired somebody and they just don't show up,
Yeah.
It's difficult, but I think you're right. I think they're getting taken by either their former companies or the local companies where they live. They have a little bit of time before they come see us, and I think somebody just poaches them in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't tell us. They just don't show up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Well, thanks,
All right.
guys. We appreciate all your time. This is being recorded, so we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it. And if any of you have any questions, I just want to share sort of this final slide. Maybe you could take a screenshot of it, or also feel free to reach out to me. I think some of you have my email since I scheduled the webinar. So this particular slide has all of our email addresses. Please feel free to reach out and give us a call. We'd love to chat.
Absolutely.
Hey, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
You bet.
Sure.
Chad, where can we find your podcast?
Yeah. If you listen to podcasts currently, it doesn't matter where you look. It could be iTunes or any of the Google stuff or Android Castbox. I mean, there's all of them. If you just search Recruit and Retain Trucking, you'll find it. Yeah. And it's been, there'll be 3 years of episodes. It was a weekly podcast for a while. I just recently went down to twice a month to take a little time off.
I'll bet. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you
Great,
can
thanks.
catch Leah on Road Dog Radio
Thursday.
Sure.
Thursday. Yeah.
All right.
The first
Thursday,
Thursday of every
okay.
month is payday.
Nice. I love that. I just love that, Leah.
True. I love listening to Leah when I'm working. All right, guys. Have a great rest of the week.
Yes.
Have a good week, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.